Welcome. We've got two zebra stallions roaring after each other in a big fight. I'm going to try and catch up with them. Oh, they're going back that way. And they've been kicking and bucking and chasing each other. They're about to go past us. Oh, there's blood all over the one. I'm just going to try and get us in the right spot. This is a very serious zebra stallion fight. My name is Brendio Smith and welcome to Safari Live. And just see the dust disappearing in front of us from them. I'm going to try and figure out where they come out. And we might head back to where we saw the rest of the herd. But there's blood pouring out of the one zebra's shoulder. This is a very serious zebra fight. Where they disappeared to. I've got Andrew Francis on camera with me. We have James Henry and Brian Joubert on the other vehicle. And we have Lou and Tara in final control. So we've been trying to keep up with them. They've been roaring down the side of the road. I think what we'll do is we'll try to get back towards where we saw the herd. It should loop back towards there. And zebras can be extraordinarily violent animals. And often the wounds and scars you see on them are not caused by lions, which a lot of people think. They're caused by other zebras.
Yeah, they come on the right.
Yeah, they come on the right. Well spotted, Andrew. So the one in front on his right side has got a big bloody wound on his shoulder. Obviously, keeping up with them can be quite a challenge. And there's the rest of the herd, the females, just waiting to see who is the victor. Obviously, everyone's a little bit jumpy in this cold, windy morning. Oh, there's the dust of the stallions further down the road. And judging from where they're looking, the stallions are in here somewhere. Now, I've seen zebra stallions fight for up to 2 hours in the Makati salt pans of Botswana. Literally, they could pop up anywhere. So, Andrew, keep your eyes open. We're going to try to listen for the pounding hooves. Yeah, that to do. It sounds like they might be coming back towards us. We're just going to wait here. I know it's a bit difficult for you guys, but I can actually hear their hooves. Here we go, Andrew. Just ran across in front of us and at high speed. Now, when the loser, which looks like at the moment is the forerunner, the one running in front, gets tired, that other stallion will press home his advantage. Okay. Looks like they crossed the road.
Any updates?
So unfortunately we're still on handhelds here. Andrew's got some audio behind us. No updates, Craig?
Morning, Brent. Thank you.
Here we go. Is that the one with the... They're getting tired now. have a look at that bite wound on its shoulder. This one, there we go. You can see the blood on its side. And there we go. That looks, it could be from a kick, but I think that looks like a bite. It's actually got blood on both front legs. And here comes the other, but they are getting a bit tired. I think this has probably been going on for quite a while already. Oh, there we go. And even the one who's doing the chasing at the moment, he's got some blood up on his back, also looks like from a bite. Oh, this way. Trying to get up ahead of them. But they are moving at a rate of knots. Hold on, Andrew. Good. Where did they go? I just saw them here a brief second ago. They're keeping us going and going in circles. They are brutal, which Paul Rizzo has noted. They can be very, very brutal. Is that the rest of the herd there? They're the two stallions on the left. You can see the blood. That's the one. Just disappearing. I'm going to wait here, see if they run out into the open. I mean, it's difficult enough following them on this open fire break. We're not going to be able to follow them inside that thicket. And Country Girl Ash says, are they fighting over mares? Most definitely. So, zebra social hierarchy is relatively simple. They're not territorial, but they will defend their harem, which is what the social structure is called. So it'll be a stallion and a harem. He will defend a small group of females, and the competition for these harems is very, very fierce. Seems like it's calmed down now. I think they're quite tired. They've probably been going at it for a while. So while we're watching there, it did look like the one doing the chasing was a bit smaller, and GJ from Southern California noted that. I do, and GJ, one must remember, it's not always the size that's important, and we can see that in lions and leopards as well. It's quite often the aggression. And of course, size does help, but quite often it's the attitude that'll get you the girls. And one could say that's quite true for human beings as well. So it looks like it's all calmed down now, but what a really exciting way to start the sunrise safari. It might be grey, but it's never dull. And woof. And remember, guys, if you have any questions, you can whack them through to us on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can use the email address questions@wildearth.tv. So before we had these zebras racing around chasing each other, our plan was this morning to head along our northern boundary, and fingers crossed some lions might cross. We're looking for tracks of lions, and then we're going to head down towards the eastern boundary, and maybe one of those Birminghams who's mating with the Styx lionesses come further enough west that we can find them. I know James is headed off to the opposite side of the property, and he's looking for those leopards from last night. But all's calm here. It seems like it would be really fascinating to know, and obviously we can't really know for sure whether the winner of this zebra duel was the challenger or the male that already held the harem. So we're returning to our original plan now, back onto our northern boundary, and the line news from north of the boundary is that, as far as I know, the Nkuhumas are still eating that giraffe they managed to catch, and once the other guys get going a bit later, I will find out how much meat is possibly left on that giraffe, so when we can expect Nkuhumas to start moving. And as I said, the Salalas looked like they're headed back towards their more traditional home range to the south west of us, back down towards the Sand River. And you can see it was quite a challenge to keep up with them. We were flying down the road, and Andy said, she says, wow, I knew zebras were fast, but I didn't know they were that fast. Well, when you got to keep out of the lion's jaws, it helps to have a good turn of speed. But the one thing a zebra doesn't have is stamina. It's always good to test the cameraman early in the morning, get them moving that tripod. Gonna wake them up a bit, especially Andrew. So I am going down into quite a steep dip here, and occasionally we do have a bit of signal issue in these dips. Bear with me, I'll just move quickly through it. I even said to Andrew before we went live today, I got a feeling we're going to see some really good stuff today. And so far, those feelings have worked out quite well in the park. But we've started off with a bang. I've got to just bring that excitement level. Remember to check for tracks, so we're going to go a little bit slower again. I'm going to check all the major game paths that cross this northern boundary. So, zebra fights are really, really violent. And Emily Moon's wondering, do they ever fight to the death? They can do, Emily, but generally it's unusual. More often than not, the vanquished will move away rather than get to that stage. And because they don't have that much stamina, when the fight sort of peters out, they will let the vanquished leave, but they quite often will push home their advantage, really beating them on the ground if they get that opportunity. But the other risk, and why one of the main reasons they let the vanquished leave and those fights seldom go all the way to the death, is because while you're off chasing someone off away from your harem, someone else can sneak in there and steal it. And obviously you are now very fatigued and you've got to come back and there's a new stallion lording over the females. Not such a big problem in this area at the moment, but in areas like the Masai Mara and central Botswana, where the elephants travel in groups of hundreds, it's very easy for a stallion to nip in. So even within those really large groups and migrations, there will be stallions defending up to sort of 10 or 15 individual individual females within those groups. Very, very fascinating. And just a quick thank you to Kevin, who was listening to the Juma cam last night. So there was quite a lot of hyena action between about 12 and 3, I think. It was 12 and 3. But also lions calling in the distance around 1. Well, Kevin, hopefully these lions are somewhere on Juma and we're going to be able to find them. Oh. Sitting on the board. Fallen into the vehicle. And as I said, it's quite a cool morning, but it looks like there is a bit of cloud coming through. I mean, a bit of blue sky breaking through. And it's 19 degrees Celsius, 66 Fahrenheit. And for those of you who still follow the Kelvin, it's 292 Kelvin and 6.27 Newton. Jill thinks Andrew was trying to eat his breakfast while we were chasing the zebra and was struggling. Well, I can tell you now he's now covered in milk and cereal. No, I'm only joking. He wasn't eating his breakfast. He did have his breakfast bar before we departed this morning. Double checking for tracks there. So, if a Challenger took over that harem and managed to oust decided to stop talking. This crested francolin were calling to their heart's content, being very loud next to the road. Oh, there's a little bit of it. There you go. Very distinct part of the dawn chorus, the crested francolins. Noisy little blighters. There, off they went. And off they call again behind the termite mound. So, sorry Lisa, back to your question. Sometimes, not all the time, but it does happen occasionally where a new stallion will kill the foals. Especially if they're younger foals, but it doesn't happen every time. Come on, lion tracks, or leopard tracks, or cheetah tracks, or wild dog tracks. I think we should just have a general come on tracks. Right back. Here we go. Andrew caught. Oh, I think it's quite a nice little flowering plant that is. Do you want to go forward a bit? Is that okay? Which has just made an appearance, and it's quite a tall plant. And it is called the tall white squill. And as plants go, we'll show you how tall it is. Okay. The one nice thing about having the handheld is I'm in constant communication even when I'm off the vehicle. There we go. A tall white squill, probably about James's height, What do you think, Andrew? Yes, maybe a bit taller. Oh, can you get this here? You got it?
Yes.
You see the green on his face?
Pushing it.
Pushing it. Hey, let me move the car a bit closer. So literally there's a longhorn beetle that's feeding off that the pollen in that tall white squirrel, and his whole front end is covered in the pollen. So let's see if we can show you that. I'm getting a little bit closer. How's that, Andrew? A little bit closer. Obviously, I don't want to disturb this beetle while he's having his breakfast. Here we go. A little bit lower. There we go. You can see that greenish tinge around his front. And that's all the pollen he's collecting from this plant. And as it warms up, it's a bit cool and at the moment, so there's not that many insects around just yet. And a lot of different insects will utilize this plant. Wasps, one of them bees, butterflies, but there is another squirrel that looks very, very similar to this one, and that one can be quite dangerous because this one is a well-known medicinal plant, and the other, as well as being a medicinal plant, it's also quite dangerous. The seeds have a highly, highly strong hallucinogen in them.
Ooh.
and it's very, very noxious. So apart from that, it can in overdoses be very detrimental towards your well-being. I'm just trying to remember the name of the toxin now. I'm just having a quick look in my book while Andrew is showing you the squill. And it's very, very important when dealing with medicinal plants to actually know the difference between the two. Okay, well, I will find out that for you a little bit later, but while we do our homework in our books, we're going to send you back, we're going to send you across so James can say good morning, and we'll be back with you a little later.
Good morning everyone. I greet you with an elephant. A beautiful, enormous elephant bull, marvelously framed there by a telegraph pole. Now, while you look at that elephant, you are most welcome, of course. Brent has given you all the important introductions. You know why you're here, you know what you're doing here. My name is James Hendry. On camera is Brian Joubert. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
There we go. The thumb. And that is a huge elephant bull. Now, we have come into this area, we've bumped into this elephant purely by chance. We have found tracks of the mating leopards that we saw last night, and they have mercifully headed out of Arathusa, which is the reserve to the west of us. We're on that boundary road now, and they've gone into Djuma. So we're going to head around on the road and see if we can't follow up on the tracks, see if we can find them on the Djuma side. That elephant bull is rather magnificent, but he's also in some very thick bush. So we're probably not going to go chasing in there after him. It might incur his wrath, and we don't really want to do that, do we? And as I'm sure Brent has told you, we are on a live safari, #SafariLive, if you want to talk to us on the tweet. Otherwise, feel free to send us an email, questions@wildearth.tv. Carrier pigeons, not particularly useful in this area. Too many birds of prey, they'll probably be eaten on their way in. Right, well, we'll just sit here for a little bit longer while he's being quite confiding. You can see he's got enormous tusks. Tusks, of course, forming part of the top of this, or the incisor teeth, and they come straight out of the top of the skull. Those are pretty big ones for this particular area. There aren't many big tuskers left. And while we're looking at him, people are often extremely attached to the very obvious emotion that elephants show. And Lynn, in Western Canada, you've obviously seen some footage of elephants playing with the bones of the dead. And certainly there's a lot of thought that this is a case of mourning. So we absolutely do seem to see that with elephants. And I remember once we had a dead elephant at a place called Ngala. And for many nights, a whole herd would come up to where the carcass was, and they'd stand around in dead silence for at least an hour before moving off. And they did that for about 3 or 4 nights in a row. And it was a very sort of humbling, I suppose, experience. And it was also an experience that gave you an impression that there were absolutely some kind of emotion flowing through the herd. We can't define what that is, of course, we don't know, but of course we are very tempted out here to anthropomorphize the animals that we see, and so we'll probably put it down to some kind of sorrow, and I think that that's the most accurate way of putting it. So Lynn, it's very common. You absolutely do see elephants mourning their dead by picking up the bones. They will make those either deep infrasonic rumbles while they're doing it, and they might even shout. They'll put the bones on their heads and then drop them on the ground. He's a magnificent fellow, this, he really is. Chewing slowly away. I'd put him at roughly 35 years old, so he's a bull in his prime. You can probably also hear the ring-necked dove calling just to the side. Right, I think let us... Oh, there he is. Well done.
Brent, coming, Brent.
Right, we're going to carry on and see if we can't pick up these leopard tracks.
Brent,
See if we don't have some luck.
From Roy from Safari, straight across Ghana and shadow crossing east into Uyapela, near Linwood Drive.
Marvellous. Just going to quickly get hold of Craig on the radio. We're in the new vehicle, of course. A couple of technical issues we need to work on. Ideally, we want this coming into my ear so that you don't have to listen to it. But we will definitely have to talk every so often on the radio, I'm afraid.
Brent, I think I've got cuts and heading south from Vessel towards the Double M.
Of course, many people feel that the radio is a free cell phone service where there is no bill attached to how long you speak. This is, of course, a mistake, and one should speak as little as humanly possible on the radio to avoid traffic. Right, we're now at the far southwestern corner of Juma. We're going to head in that way and see if we can't find any tracks. With any luck, the leopard will just be walking about the road. I am following up on those Tingana and Shadow tracks. They cross halfway between the Red Dam Road and Zebra Drive. I'll follow up. Edward, yes, it is indeed Tingana again. Negative, nowhere near there. I was, couldn't they cross into... Just go again with that update. I had Roy with me at Junction, Zebra Drive and Red Dam Road, and we both have the tracks going into Wuyatela. Confirm they cross out of Wuyatela at Leadwood Drive. Just some confusing messages there on the radio. We're on track.
Break.
Right. We are in the right, definitely in the right place. And Edward, you say, is it Tingana again? Edward, it is Tingana again. He is having to, steel himself for all the ladies that are attracting his attention and basically harassing him. And to watch, oh dear. We watched them last night, of course, and Shadow was extremely, well, she was very definite about what she wanted, and he was not really quite so definite about giving it to her. We watched them walking along the road. It was very funny to watch, and he was trying to mark his territory, concentrate on doing his job, and she'd lie in front of him and growl and flick her tail in his face and then sort of back into him, and he'd step around her patiently, carry on with his way, try and mark his territory, and this happened 10 or 12 times as they walked along the road. Very funny to watch. Now this is round about the area that we think they've come into, so we just have to be very careful while we're watching the road and see that the tracks don't cross. There's not much irritates other guides in the area more, flies everywhere, than if you drive over the tracks rather than spot them. I've done this myself, of course, by mistake. Leopard, of course, don't weigh very much, and so you need to be quite careful if you're on hard ground. There is a great plethora of flies. Can you see them on the screen there? So we'll drive very slowly up this road. So they were coming basically from where I'm pointing there. That's where the tracks headed into Wuyatela or Djuma. You can see a fairly leaden sky. It's actually quite nice this time of year. I don't think it's going to rain. I think we may get a little bit of spittle a bit later, but not much in the way of great cyclonic thunderstorms. It's unlikely to happen. And I'm told that the weather report says there is a chance of showers at 7 a.m. The nearest sort of weather station, though, is about probably 20 or 30 kilometers away. So, and the weather here is very localized. So it may rain there, it may then follow to here, it may not. Who knows? So we don't have a predictor weather station here, no meteorological office, other than those provided by the traditional methods of checking whether it's going to rain, which seem to be about as accurate and as throwing a dice, really. Brian, you will tell me if you see two mating leopards, won't you?
Maybe.
Okay, thanks. Myself into trouble every so often by casting aspersions on the characters of our leopards here. And Ellen, you make a very good point. that while I have described Shadow as harassing Tingana, she's doing precisely what any leopardess in estrus would do. There's nothing unusual about what we're watching. I'm not sure, however, that Tingana is necessarily behaving completely normally. It may well be that he's just a little bit tired after the exertions of having mated with Karula. Ooh, here we go. Here are the tracks on the road. It may just be that he's a bit exhausted after the exertions of mating with Karula for many days. Sorry, I'm going to be not looking at the screen camera for now, just checking where these tracks go. They definitely go onto the road in front of us. So as Ellen says, Shadow is definitely not being anything other than a totally normal leopard. So here are his tracks. I don't see hers anywhere. He was probably carrying on his territorial marking. And it was actually really hilarious because she disappeared into the bush, and then he sensed her coming out while he was marking his territory, and he stopped. The track's still on the road. And he stopped and he saw her, and he hunkered down onto the road and put his ears flat back, and she looked around desperately and she spotted him, and you could see as he saw her, he kind of lifted his head and looked around like this and put his ears back and grunted, and she came trotting over, and he could not have been less impressed by seeing her. She was completely undeterred by this, of course. See the tracks anymore. We'll just drive a little bit further along. Leopards often weave up and down. Have you got some there? So Brian had some on the left-hand side there. Let's just check in all the trees in case they haven't made a kill. Any termite mounds. Bird over there. It's definitely not a leopard. We'll go as far as that before we turn around and come back and see if the tracks don't go somewhere else. Just going to pull that in on the radio. Tracks of Tingana come onto Zoe's road, Rebecca's road, and head north. I'm not sure. I'm going to follow from here. Got to drive very slowly, and it's always a bit of a toss-up as to how fast you should go, because they do move, of course, but at night they move. Normally during the day they'll go still. While we were looking for leopards and waiting to get into the sighting yesterday afternoon, I had to do a couple of running repairs on the front of the vehicle with some duct tape in order to stop the rattling from the jack. And Larry in Danville, you say it looks like somebody's fixed it proper. Larry, they have not. My fixing is as it was yesterday evening. There it is. You can see the duct tape is firmly in place and doing its job admirably. Thank you, Larry, for pointing out my amazing DIY skills. As I said yesterday, so as I was saying yesterday, there's a wonderful law called the law of the instrument, and that law states that if the only tool you have is a hammer, then all problems will tend to look like nails. Now, this is much the same with duct tape. If the only tool you have is duct tape, all problems will look like they can be fixed by duct tape, and indeed it would seem that they can. And then On the subject of the car, of this mighty vehicle that we're driving around the place, while we're looking for leopards, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Question from Washington about what it is, I mean, how customized the vehicles are. This is a standard issue 90. So, this is from Lyle in Washington. This is a standard issue 90, and that means it's a 90-inch chassis. Land Rover 90, and basically with the Land Rover it's quite nice. I mean, this is one nice feature of them, is that you don't need to cut the roof off, you can just basically bolt it off. So it's a standard issue 90 pickup with the roof bolted off, and then there are some modifications that are made post-delivery. We've attached a sort of large center console for the camera to sit on, a couple of benches, which are not particularly comfortable for Brian to sit on. Brian adds a pillow to that so that his bottom doesn't become sore during the driving around the place. This thing, this kind of khaki dashboard top is quite new. But otherwise, pretty standard, you know. There's not a huge amount of difference. All the technical equipment is new, but there are no major modifications. That's the nice thing about the Land Rover. Like I say, you can pull off the roof. You don't need to cut it off. Our Land Rover swears blind that they are not going to make the Defender anymore. That they've come to an end. I think it's a marketing ploy myself. I think you'll find that they will eventually re-emerge. It is probably not sort of the great sadness that the design has been retired. It hasn't been modified since roughly 1754. What is that? A really nice thing for us at WildEarth. It's the stick. So the nice thing about this little car is that it's short wheelbase, and so it's really good off-road. It's much less cumbersome than the long wheelbases that a lot of the other guys out here have to drive when they're driving with guests. So we can go lots of places that other people can't, which is ideal for filming purposes. Right, the tracks disappeared off the road somewhere around here. What we did notice yesterday was that Tingana was limping along. He's very clearly sore on his left fourth paw, and we don't really know how that happened. Glenn in Idaho, you were clearly watching last night, so thank you for your time. And a good question, do I have any further thoughts on it? I didn't lose a huge amount of sleep over it, I have to admit, because the rest of the sighting just astonished me so much, so I kind of forgot about it. But Glenn, I think you'll find that it's one of two things. He was hunting a buffalo a little while back with Karula. I think that could have injured it. I think also that you've seen how aggressive the mating is. You've seen that as he climbs off her, she turns around and she'll take a swat at him. And I wouldn't be surprised if a claw has caught him, perhaps in the foot, and maybe that's what's injured him. There was some talk about maybe it being an injury from a fight with another male leopard. I really don't think that's the case. I think that much more likely have hurt his head. That's where they fight. They go for the neck. There'd be some other kind of injury if there'd been a physical fight. And leopards will avoid physical confrontation as much as they possibly can, because if they do get injured, it's obviously extremely dangerous for them, because they don't live in a pride, they don't live in a group. So if they get injured, that's normally it. So they need to be very careful. And I'm hoping fervently, as I'm sure are all of you, that his injury is not serious. Many of you will now have seen leopards mating, and it is a quite astonishing performance that goes on for many days, up to 10 times an hour sometimes. And Jeffrey in Austin, Texas, you ask a brilliantly valid question. How many of those actual copulations are actually, have a sperm deposit involved? Jeffrey, most of them actually. I don't think that they produce enormous volumes of ejaculate. I'm sure it kind of tapers off towards the end of the mating period, but all of them will produce something. Okay, here was where the last tracks were. Don't know where they go. I'm just going to wonder if we can't hand over to Brent quickly while I look around for the tracks. We might be able to do that. Oh, they're over here, the tracks. Just have a quick listen and see if we can't hear them. They're very noisy when they mate, of course. There's a lot of growling and shouting. So I can't hear anything there. I can hear an African cuckoo calling. Boop, 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 boop. But nothing in the way of leopards. Okay, we'll go around onto the next road there. See if we can't pick up other tracks. I think they've probably gone into this block now. So just keep an eye in here. They might be under a bushel somewhere, or maybe they're sharing a kill. That's the other thing that does happen, of course, is that this is the one time when leopards tend to hunt in a slightly communal fashion, and that's why Karula and Tingana managed to take out and eat for themselves a small buffalo the other day. Otherwise, normally too big a prey. And I'm sure he did most of the bulk of the killing with that, but she would definitely have helped him. And, well, we just wonder if the same thing won't happen here. Ooh, lion tracks. Well, we're going to head across to Brent quickly. I suspect he's following some lion tracks. Just listening to him. Alright, we're going to head across to Brent. He's going to give you an update. He's definitely following something quite exciting. I will just have a look at these tracks and we'll keep you posted. It's all going on. It's all rather confusing. Check in with Brent and I'll see you just now.
I told you, I had a feeling this morning, and we're going to be going really, really slowly, checking really carefully. I found the tracks of a single male cheetah coming into Djuma, as well as the tracks of a male leopard. But we're going to leave the male leopard tracks. I know James is tracking other leopards, and we're going to see if we can find where these cheetah tracks come out of this block. So we're going to be going at snail's pace. I don't want to miss the tracks in this bad light. Tracks went off the road in this general area here, and those of you who have followed cheetah with us before will know that they don't really like using the roads, and they do that to avoid the other predators. So they don't like using big game paths or roads because leopards, lions and hyenas like using big game paths and roads. I'm just going to check a little bit through here, but if this cheetah's gone through the bush, it's going to be near impossible to track while on the vehicle. But we've got to think like an animal. And if I was a cheetah in the general direction it's heading, I think we're going to go check Buffelshoek waterhole. And there's a good chance it's heading almost directly towards there, but going through the bush, not along the roads. So we're pretty much opposite where those tracks went off. But I still think he's going to be heading further north. But we'll just double check, rather make sure. While I'm got my head glued to the ground, Andrew is scanning around us, hoping to spot that cheetah or that leopard. Very exciting. Tracks of mating leopards, tracks of a cheetah. Morning, Craig. Gonzo the single Kanka. West of Cheetah Cut line towards Drakensberg Central Junction. I'm busy checking the area.
Alright, copy. I'll keep my eyes right on Condams Road.
So we've got some kudu over there, very relaxed, munching away. And kudu have got incredibly good eyesight at spotting predators. So I think we're just going to check the soft sand up ahead here, and then we're going to turn around and head towards the Buffelshoek waterhole. So, Siberia is zooming, and she's wondering, are we close to the Jimma waterhole cam so she can keep an eye out too? Unfortunately not, Siberia. We're well on the eastern side of Jimma, quite far from the cam. Very, very, very unusual track I'm trying to figure out here. Very strange. See that the ground's been flattened here. First thought it was an elephant, but it's not. It's a very big python, incredibly big snake. Very unusual track. See, it's actually laying and gone across there, but it's actually been resting here during the night. Quite often, if you just check very carefully, sometimes you find them very close by. Now, if I was a python, I'd go sleep. Nope. Might have moved a bit further, but it's always worth checking where you find these big python tracks very close by. I guess that particular one, just judging from that track, is a good at least 3 meters long. So, not sure how long that is in feet, but I think it's about 8-9 foot maybe. A 9-foot snake. Maybe a bit, I think maybe it's even a bit more, maybe even 12 foot. So I'm going to go on my instincts now. Because cheetah don't like to walk down the roads, I think it's going through the bush parallel to the road, and more than likely it's going to head towards the Buffalo's Hook waterhole. Andrew, keep your eyes open. There's 2 spotted cats in this area at the moment.
Break the use for almost water.
Oh, okay, just got chat cake. Okay, last track goes into the block between Drakensberg and Cheetah Cut Line in Central. General direction northwest. I'm going to check Drakensberg through to around Buffalo's Hook or Gorrie Pan. I think that's the general direction of the track.
Okay, copy. I'm just coming to Penguin Track Junction, turn down for moving this side.
Copy. There's also tracks of a single one in Inway coming down on Central towards Drakensberg. If I have no luck with the Shikakunk, I'll come back to those.
Alright, copy.
So he would have just crossed here somewhere. So again, we're going to be checking really, really carefully. And also listening, hoping that monkeys or kudu or impala, nyala spot this animal. Paul Rizzo is being quite funny this morning. He says, well, number 1 survival rule out in the African bush is don't walk down a trail or a path or a road. Well, if you're a cheetah, it's a very good survival rule. And Mike says he remembers seeing 2 male cheetah a couple of months ago on drive. I think this could be one of those 2. And how close we got to them. We had such a special time with them. That we spent, I think, 2 full drives with those male cheetah before they crossed north. And male cheetah have vast home ranges, so they move through an area and they can walk vast distances very quickly. So ideally, if we want to see cheetah regularly, we got to hope for a female with cubs, and then they're more sedimentary for a while. But cheetah are fascinating species. It is one of the only animals or mammals that needs a male bias sexual ratio for mating. So you need to have more males than females, and female cheetah will often pass up on 3 or 4 coalitions of males before deciding to mate. And they are quite nomadic as well, both male and female. And they have home ranges, but they're very large and very loosely set. Places like the Masai Mara, obviously they're much smaller, and that's due to food availability and terrain. And there's a big misconception that cheetah need wide open plains to be successful. Mixed woodland like this is actually very good cheetah country. Just they're much easier to spot on wide open plains. And the largest meta population of cheetah. Meta population is sort of the population that holds the most genetic variation and most numbers, is actually the Greater Kruger National Park. Not what we would expect, the Masai Mara or Kalahari Desert. Now, on the reserve where my parents live, we have a coalition of 2 male cheetah that we see quite regularly, and over the last 4 years or so I've spent a lot of time with them on foot, and the fact so now they're so habituated, and these are completely wild cheetah that have never been they haven't been hand reared, they're not from a petting zoo. I can sit about 4 meters away from them on the ground. I've actually walked with them while they're hunting before and seen them catching impala on foot. And cheetah do climb trees, Shannon, but not very well, not quite like a leopard. Normally they'll use fallen down trees or branches to get a vantage point, and they also like defecating in high ground and scent marking in those places. Unfortunately, there have been quite a few elephants and buffalo this morning around here, which is making the tracking even more difficult. I'm even considering making Andrew drive and I'll sit on the bonnet. So I'm hoping this big junction here is where we'll find some tracks. Hyena tracks. And there we go. Cheetah tracks have come out here. Still heading towards the Buffalo's Hook waterhole. It is very bad light, but I'll try to show you quickly. And it's heading towards our northern boundary, so we're not going to waste too much time showing you a track. We can rather show you an animal. There. So it looks very much like a hyena with the claws in the front, but at the back it's got the 3 lobes of a cat. This cheetah have semi-retractable claws, and it's one of the only cats that can't fully retract its claws. So when they walk, the claws do show. Just gonna update the other guys. Nkonzo of that Wanuna Shikankanka still heading north from Gwaripan Junction towards Buffalo's Hook Dam. I'm gonna go check the dam. So the first time I saw cheetah on Juma, I was with Brian, and we had their tracks and we were tracking them, and we looked up and we saw these 2 male cheetah actually very close to Buffalo's Hook where we're going now, and we had a really spectacular sighting, and something quite interesting happened there. They were chased by a leopard, and Gilly, who's from Milwaukee, says, "Please remind me, Brent, which male leopard chased those cheetah?" And I know it was a deer leopard to a lot of you. It was Quarantine, young male leopard who chased those 2 male cheetah. So at the moment, I'm not actually going to stop and look for tracks. I can come back, I can do that slowly in case they have veered, but I don't think so. I think they're going to go straight towards Buffalo's Hook, and that is close to our boundary, so we want to make sure if they are still on our property that we can get there beforehand. So it's quite possible, or it's likely that cheetah cheetah has now gone through the block here or here, avoiding this road. It would be amazing if we get there and he's having a drink. Sometimes you've got to just take that chance, because if we stayed on the tracks individually, it would probably take us an hour to cover the distance if we look for each individual track. Sometimes you've got to try to think like an animal and try and second guess there. Andrew, fingers crossed. Come on, Shikankanka. That is the Shangaan name for a cheetah. Shikankanka. Shikanka. Oh, well, we don't have a Shikankanka, but we have a Nuntra, Mvubu. Morning, Gerald.
South from Superluma, there's a new cross back west into Arizona. If you don't mind fragrance, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah, I'll make my way there.
We've got a male giraffe at the waterhole. What have you spotted, giraffe? Giraffe are very good at spotting things, so just want to go around and have a look where we can't see where he was looking earlier, just in case. So good to just sit and listen. And we've got, before we go back to that giraffe, Andrew, there's a bird we don't see as often right at the back, up next to the Ziziphus, about to disappear, up to behind the saddleballs, to the right, and up. Oh, he's gone behind the bush. We'll see if we can find him now. There's a woolly neck stalk there as well. And then we've got some saddle-billed stalks to the left. And looks like only 2 hippos today. What are you looking at, Gerald? Just listening carefully. And we've chatted a lot about the hyoidian apparatus, which is the voice box in big cats. And cheetah do not have the same apparatus as lions and leopards. And there's 2 amakops now. And Mike was wondering what type of noise or contact calls do adult cheetah make? And Country Girl Ash said, don't they have a very chirping noise? That is correct, and that is their contact call. It almost sounds like a bird chirping, very high pitched, and I'm afraid I cannot imitate it. And funny story, once quite a many years ago, one of the amazing Shangaan trackers I worked with and myself were watching a female cheetah with 5 cubs in the Sabi Sands. And a guide from another lodge, we're on the boundary of our property, drove up there, and the female cheetah was making those high-pitched bird chirp contact calls to her cubs. And the other guide said to his tracker, "Umfit, what in Yoni is that?" I said, "What bird's making that noise?" And Simon and I nearly burst into laughter, and we looked at the poor tracker sitting on that other vehicle, and he just sort of shook his head. He's like, "But why they give me this guide like this?" But yeah, so that was quite a funny story. That poor man did not live it down for many a year. I think he had only just qualified as a full guide. Maybe one of his first cheetah sightings. Gerald, as much as we enjoy spending time with you, we've got cats to look for. So that cheetah's either made it here before us. I'm not going to get out and walk because we might disturb poor Gerald. We're going to go check around onto the cut line again, onto our northern boundary, and see if we find anything that side. While we do, we're going to go see how Commander Bond's tracking expedition is going.
Hello everyone. No luck with the leopards as yet, I'm afraid. We've just stopped here. There seems to be a really beautiful little bird party going on here. You can hear a white-browed scrub robin calling. There are some drongos. There's a green pigeon. There's a green pigeon there. Beautiful bird. What else have we got in there? Some black flycatchers. That's really nice. And that drongo is imitating a rattling stickler. It's going choo choo choo, blip, blip, blip. That's what a rattling stickler does. Southern black tit. In fact, there isn't a robin. Sorry, I mean there was. So, we have been unsuccessful so far. It looks like the track's headed in this direction off the road. So we'll keep driving the block around here and see if nothing pops out. We also had some impala alarm calling, but that was from way south. And there were some tracks of a male lion and a female lion heading in that direction. Perhaps it was them, but they've definitely gone off the reserve that we're on, so we can't follow up on the lions. So we'll continue with fortitude, our tracking of these 2 mating leopards, but where they are is anyone's guess at this stage. Tingana, like I say, was definitely marking his territory yesterday evening. And what that means is that, I mean, a male leopard marking his territory can go an enormous distance, even with the attentions of a female leopard, trying desperately to encourage him to mate. And now Tingana, of course, has been mating with Kwatile, he's been mating with Karula, he's been mating with now Shadow twice. This is his second bout of mating with her, and seemingly without success. No cubs yet. And as Angie makes the point, thank you for that, Angie, it would be rather nice to have some cubs around, well, firstly just to look at them, and secondly so that Tingana can take a load off, have a bit of a rest, and stop being harassed by these ladies. I say it's not a problem, I think that, not an unpleasant problem he has. But it is interesting that in the last 6 times he's mated, seemingly not. He hasn't seemingly, on 6 mating occasions, seemingly not managed to produce offspring, which is
make up their mind. What was that?
I think it's different with
I don't know what's going on. Sorry everybody, a couple of listening to the radio. A couple of strange messages coming through on the radio. I think I'm still with you. I hope I'm still with you. And we had a question from D, but I'm afraid I missed the question through some odd radio traffic coming through. But D, we will get back to you with your question now.
Were they on a bumper or just give a monkey?
Sorry, I'm just getting an update on the radio there. Right, never mind for now. D, as far as I understand your question, and I'm not sure I'm getting it right, do the females... Brian flooded? Did you get that? No. Ah, there we go, flag. Do the females flag their estrus? They do. They flag it in, but not visually. They flag it with pheromones and with olfactory signs. So they will leave signs in their urine, and that will definitely sort of encourage the males. But they also go and find the males, and you don't find them behaving in that kind of tail flicking, bottom in the face way with at any other time other than when they're ready to mate. And they're one of the, we had a very interesting discussion the other day about females that show estrus, that demonstrate estrus, because it's by no means universal in mammals. And they reckon that one of the ways to stop infanticide, which was of course the killing of youngsters by unrelated males, is to hide estrus and to mate with multiple males so that nobody really knows who the father is. And what that does is reduce infanticide. Now in leopards that's not so much the case, but we do think that perhaps the fact that they mate with more than one male either indicates that there could be more than one parent, more than one father in a litter of cubs. Otherwise, that's a bit of a bump. Otherwise, that the fact that they mate with more than one male just tricks the neighboring males into believing that they produce cubs, and because they believe that they perhaps produce cubs, they're not necessarily likely to kill new cubs. And of course the major cause of death for young leopards is other male leopards, not related. Compliment coming in from Tammy. Thank you, Tammy, in Iowa. You say that you want to know, well, first of all, you say that I have a nice accent. That's very kind of you. There were many who would disagree, but I'm very, very pleased that you enjoy it. Thank you very much. And you want to know how many languages I can speak and how many do I need on Game Drive. The only language you really need on Game Drive is English, because everybody speaks pretty good English around here. But the language that I use with some of the rangers here, some of the Shangaan rangers, is called Shangaan, and it's a language that I learned through working out here, very similar to another language called Zulu, which I can speak but badly, but I can get by with it. And that's another indigenous language, very similarly structured to Shangaan. Thank you very much, Tammy, and very kind of you. I'm just going to quickly talk with Brent. Go ahead, Brent.
James, check the chapter.
I think I'm copied that you would like to come and give me a hand in this area. That would be very nice if you want to come down here. We did have one male, one female lion on Philemon's line, but they seem to be a bit off to the south, so I didn't follow up from there. And I'm currently currently checking Impala Road towards Impala Plains. Craig's checking Triple M, and I think they could be in the block between Impala Road and a big block between Impala Road, Triple M, and Rebecca's. So Brent is going to come and help us in the area, because it would seem that all the tracks that he's been following have headed off the reserve, which is very irritating indeed. So we'll circle around here, and if we're lucky, we'll come across the leopards. We probably won't spend the entire morning looking for them, but first of all, mating leopards are highly exciting to look at, very interesting, and secondly, they should be relatively easy to find. I mean, they make a noise, they don't necessarily move far, but I think perhaps Tingana's attitude of wanting to mark his territory again, possibly as a result of a bit of moisture that we've had, a little bit of rain, and that would of course wash away his scent. Perhaps he's quite keen to just reassert his authority in the area. She'll just go along for the ride, I think. If you're perhaps a new viewer, or just a viewer who's forgotten, I often forget these things. Tingana is a 9-year-old male leopard. Sharon, I think you were asking that. I often have to just check up again to see how old they are. He's 9, and Shadow is also 9. So they're both in the kind of the prime of their lives, if you like. Once he gets to about 11 or 12, he'll probably start to lose condition a little bit, and as long as he's not challenged too much, he'll maintain his territory hopefully till he's about 13, but after that things will get a little rough for him, and as soon as the male leopard starts to lose condition, a young usurper will come in and take over the territory. This seems to be the kind of way it goes, and I mean the only way that you maintain dominance out here is to be big. That's pretty much it. Your brain power doesn't play a huge role, and as soon as you lose your physical prowess, you first of all can't defend your territory, and secondly you can't hunt, and leopards are not great at scavenging. So that's the aerial there. So once you get to about 13, things become a little rough. I was a guide for many years. Well, actually not for many years. I guided full-time for about 2.5 years. And that, by being a guide, that means you take people on safari full-time. And Hamish in Vancouver, while we're driving along looking for these recalcitrant hiding leopards, you want to know who I would most like to take on safari. That is a fascinating question. It's a bit like the question that I ask of people sometimes. If you could choose 3 people to take to lunch, 3 people in the world, who would they be? And then you get into the different permutations of dead or alive. Can they be dead, or do they have to be extant now? People I'd like to take on safari, Hamish. Well, you obviously, you would be one of them because you've asked the question. Who else would I take on safari, Brian? Who would you like to take on safari?
That's a big leopard.
James, I didn't pick anything up.
I mean, I think I would probably like to take someone like Desmond Tutu on safari. I think he'd probably be astonishingly informative and really amusing. Possibly a chap like Stephen Fry. I'm not sure if you know Stephen Fry. Take him on game drive, he'd be quite fun. Maybe a chap like Jared Diamond, brilliant American physiologist, linguist and ecologist, humanist. I think he would have some fascinating insights into the different ecology of this particular area. So that'll be my group of 4, Hamish. You, Stephen Fry, Bishop Tutu, and who was the other one that I said? And Jared Diamond. Maybe we'll toss in David Gilmour of Pink Floyd fame, just to sort of round it off and bring in the arts. Looks like a hyena track, not a leopard. Thanks for that, Craig.
James, where are you taking at the moment?
Craig, I am lurking around Rebecca's Road at the moment. I'm just trying to pick up any further tracks. I think the last track I had was the female going west into this block here.
Okay, copy. That's north of William's cut line.
Yeah, affirmative. That block between Triple M and Rebecca's Road.
Alright, copy.
So we're just going to very carefully drive along and check the road. Go again.
I missed that update.
Brent, sounds like, or it looks like tracks of the female go west into the block between Rebecca's and Triple M. Sorry everybody, while you're tracking you do have to keep everyone posted so that nobody doubles up and does the wrong thing. But I think we're probably, you see, on a day like this, the weather is not great for animals, so they tend to go into the bushes and hide. So it's probably worthwhile us sticking around here and just trying to find further tracks of the mating leopards, rather than disappearing and going somewhere else and seeing what else we can find. So I think we'll hang around here, if you don't mind, for the next little while, and see what we can pick up. Spending an enormous time in the bush does give you the chance to see some astonishing things. And I've been out here about 15 years on the north, and Boyd in North Carolina, good morning to you, well good evening to you I suppose. No, you must be almost in morning again. Boyd, you want to know what's my most memorable encounter? Boyd, there are far too many for me to enumerate here. For me, being out here is the reason that I'm here. It's not so much to see the amazing, well, the wildlife's almost a bonus. But certainly some of the close encounters I've had with elephants and with leopards and wild dogs have been my most memorable. Stop here and have a little listen. In terms of what I would most like to see on safari, well, it rather depends on my mood, to be honest. I think my most favourite thing to see out here is probably wild dogs on the hunt. That's the most exciting thing you can possibly see. Right, just having a little bit of a listen. See if we can't hear them growling and giving away their presence through their slightly aggressive mating. Seen that my desire to have Jared Diamond out here for a little safari is mirrored by Edward. Thank you, Edward. You say you're pleased to see his name pop up here. Yes, well, for those of you who don't know, Jared Diamond, astonishing man, massive breadth of knowledge, and I've read a lot of his stuff on the evolution of human societies, and he's a really interesting chap. So if anyone out there knows him, tell him he must come out here. I'll take him on a drive or two. You might have to sit next to Brian though. Brian, you don't mind, do you?
No, that's good.
Here we go. Here are the tracks again, or one track. There's the female. They are around here, people. These leopards are around here. It's a pretty cool day today. As you can see, I've still got my jersey on. Brian has got, and I'm not joking here when I say he's got 3 jackets with him. And Siberia, Zumi, you want to know, do we have a refrigerator on the back for the cameraman? I'm assuming you mean that's to keep them some cold brewskis while we're on drive. No, we don't do that. And Brian, of course, feels the cold terribly, so we try and keep him as warm as possible, not too much in the way of refrigeration on the back of the vehicle. I'm just going to stop here again and just to give a quick update. The tracks have come onto the road here. The tracks of the female, possibly the male as well, on Rebecca's Road now, to the, well, about 400 meters north of the junction with Philemon's cut line. I'm just trying to see where they go.
Copy, Jim. I'll check you with Nest towards
What we're going to do is just hand you across to Brent if we can. We do need to change a battery on this camera. It's apparently about to either explode or it's going to go flat, neither of which are going to be particularly exciting for you. So we're going to hand you across to Brent, and I will continue following in this area for the leopard, and we'll see you just a little bit later.
So unfortunately the tracks of that cheetah have crossed our boundary. So what we've done is we've moved into this area where James is looking for those mating leopards, and hopefully 2 of us here will be able to cover twice the ground, find them. I'm just doing a quick check at the around Treehouse, a waterhole, which isn't much of a waterhole anymore, and it's just a sort of a gut instinct. James also said there were lion traps heading in this area, so I just want to double check here in case those leopards did manage to cross Philemon's cut line. If nothing, we're going to turn around, head back on the other side of the drainage and head along Weaver's Nest Road sort of directly towards James. And what we will do shortly is, when we get a bit closer, turn off and listen, which is one of the best ways to find mating leopards. Lots of noise. Oh, we've just got the Undertaker here, and coming into breeding colours as well. Feeding off those rotting catfish carcasses. There you go, you can see that bright red coming through, and that's the stalk coming through into its breeding colours. I called it the Undertaker of the bush, and its proper name is a marabou stalk. cheetah questions while we're in search of these leopards. Happy in Seattle, saying she says she often sees beautiful pictures of tribal people interacting with cheetah. Are they relatively easy to domesticate? Unfortunately, those photographs are from one of the worst industries in Africa. Most of them, they're not incredibly real. Cheetah do habituate very easily, especially if hand reared. And there are a lot of institutions, I'm not going to name any names, who use cheetah especially as a tourist trap, as well as the other big cats, specifically lion cubs. And they will let you come touch them and stroke them. But they do keep them in captivity. So I personally am not a fan of any of those things, and I believe the cheetah should be out in the bush wild. When it comes to interacting with African tribal people, it is generally not a good relationship, and most tribal people will try and kill cheetah if they get the opportunity. They do sometimes take livestock, specifically smaller livestock like goats and sheep. And so generally not a good relationship between tribal people and cheetah. Although in certain large farming districts of Namibia, cheetah have made an incredible comeback due to a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's because lions and hyenas have been removed by the local farmers who have cattle, and most cows are too big for a cheetah, so they subsist off what wild game is on those properties because they don't have any competition from lions, hyenas, and leopards to a degree. And the other reason is there's a very successful program with Aleutian sheepdogs that live with the sheep and are basically part of the flock. And cheetah are quite scared, and even leopards to a degree are quite scared of these dogs. And it's managed to bring down predator human conflict a lot, and they are using this in quite a few different places. So really interesting. It is possible to live in harmony with Africa's large predators, but you have to be quite aware as a herder and use different methods. One of the biggest threats to Kenya and Tanzania are the Maasai. So as soon as a lion kills one of their cows, the young Moran or warriors will go out and kill that lion with spears, which is quite impressive, but nonetheless a group of 30 men with spears can quite comfortably kill a lion without getting hurt as well. So earlier I mentioned that an area like this is actually reasonably good cheetah country. It mustn't be too thick. It must be this sort of mixed woodland like this that's got quite a lot of open in it. Anna-Marie's wondering, do they have to chase them into open areas, or are they just as adept at hunting in areas like this? Anna-Marie, they're just as adept at hunting in areas like this. And as I said, most of the greater Kruger, they do very well in areas like this. So it's much easier to see them and stuff, but they do utilize areas like this as well as open areas. So in Nyala, we bypass them here. We're going to go up ahead for a couple of 100 meters, and then we're going to switch off and listen and see if we can hear that cacophony that is caused by mating leopards. And when leopards are mating, animals like impala don't take too much notice of them, so we can't. They will slaughter them if they see them, but if they hear them, it's not too much of a big deal. The one thing about following mating leopards is that they can move incredible distances. The female basically just follows the male while he's on his territorial marches, and that obviously is what draws those females far out of their territory on occasion. And female leopards have been known to move up to 4 territories away to mate with males. So I know James had tracks a couple of 100 meters to the north of me here. I'm going to check carefully in this little junction, and then I'm going to just switch off for a second and listen. Strangely enough, the last time we were tracking Tingana when he was mating on Juma, and we managed to find him, or James did when I was with the trackers, is when he was mating with Karula. We actually tracked them through this exact drainage line. Where to you two? What's that in the tree there, Andrew? Let me just get my... something in the tree there. Wondering if it's a monkey, and if it is, it's not. I was going to say if it is, we've got this area covered, because if they spot those leopards, they'll make a hullabaloo. A hullabaloo. What's the noise? Hullabaloo, I think. So we're chatting about cattle and people in Africa, and sorry, just now that's changed from just a call to an alarm call. I'm just trying to see, it could be from a predatory bird. Where's that grey go-away bird looking? Down here in front of us. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they just popped out in front of us? So, Rumey is wondering, is cattle husbandry controlled or limited in Africa? I think is what Rumey is trying to ask. No, it's not. I mean, if you can afford cows, you can have as many as you want. And there's some big cattle farms, and also most local communities will have areas that are set aside for grazing. And up in East Africa and parts of Zambia as well, they have the Maasai and Mangati, and Kikuyu, who are semi-nomadic with their cattle, and they live often on the edge of the large game reserves. So it is, they do come into conflict with animals there. And in a lot of African cultures, your wealth is based on cows. How many cows you have, how many, is sort of your investment, your money is your cattle, your wealth. And in a lot of African traditions, strangely enough, you have to pay for your wife. In this part of the world, it's called labola. And depending on the social standing of your wife and how pretty she is, etc., it depends on how many cows you have to pay. In this sort of more modern South Africa, a lot of that is paid in cash, but it's based on the value of a cow. So for a very, very expensive wife, a very well-to-do wife, I mean, I've heard of upward of $30,000-$40,000 US being paid. And you actually find that because of it, a lot of African people who live quite traditionally only get married quite a bit later, because it takes a long time to build up that dowry.
James, come in, James.
James, any luck with the direction on the last track?
So there are various programs being utilized in different parts of Africa to try bring down human-wildlife conflict. And Georgia and Illinois has just mentioned a project in Kenya where they have collared certain lions, and they've with GPS collars, and how that works is it'll ping a couple of times a day, or you can actually manually ping it and get an exact location. And then they've given the local Maasai phones that have access to that information, or they'll then text where the lions are to the local tribesmen. They will also compensate. A lot of places compensate for any livestock loss. It does work in some areas, but it doesn't in others, especially since traditionally how you become a man in Maasai culture is you have to kill a lion with a spear. These are either being very quiet mating leopards, or they're not where we think they are. I'm just going to check with James where he's checking and where he might want me to check. James.
So I've just got back on the vehicle. At least one track going into the block now. Finally found them heading towards the east in the block between Rebecca's, Finn's and Zoe's. That is Rebecca's, Finn's and Philemon's cut line. I'm going to drive around and just see what's coming out the inside.
Copy, thanks, James. I've been standing by, just doing a bit of listening at Philemon's dip. I'll check Philemon's cut line back up to quarantine. James has found tracks in the block heading east. So that's towards this general area.
Alright, indeed. I will go check back up Zoe's Road on Old Beach High.
I think that's a good idea, take it. Maybe drive down to Old Beach High.
James, are you across? Whereabouts would the track heading east onto your box of the vehicle?
So I'm just listening to the chatter on the radio.
They're heading towards the inside. Copy.
Okay, change of plans. We're going to check Rebecca's Road. I'm sure quite a few of you guys have heard us talk about Rebecca's or Zoe's roads. Those are named after the daughters of the owner of Juma. Thought I saw a flash of movement. Might have been a bird. Just always pays to double check. And the great go-away bird's still in the tree and not making any noise. So if the leopards were below it, it would be shouting from the treetops. Go away! Go away! So while we both scour this area, there's a strong possibility we might cross paths. But before we do that, let's go see how Commander Bond's tracking's been going.
Hello. Good news-ish. we eventually found some tracks in this block. So we now have a direction for where they've headed. It is quite a large block. They are leopards, and so whether or not we find these two romantic lovers, I'm really just not sure at this point. I would have thought we'd have found them by now. And I'm going to keep just checking the road with great care to see that they haven't come across. I don't think they have at this stage. We will keep checking. What is that? And of course the light now is starting to fade. That's not because the sun has reversed, it's because this bank of cloud, this sort of front that's come in, is pretty thick. And what that means is that the contrast that you need to be able to see tracks easily is that much more difficult. So it's much easier to track when you've got some low-angled light coming from one side. Brent, of course, is now also in the area. We're actually starting to get a little bit of spitting rain now, so we must be careful of that. But not much. So really, you would think with this many people looking, Craig is also around here. You'd think with this much activity around here, we'd be able to find them. But leopards are not particularly concerned about whether we are watching them or not. Anyway, we're going to look around. If we're lucky, we're lucky. If we're not, we're not. We'll find something else to look at. We're going to do quite a lot of stopping and listening. While we're stopping and listening here, let's just have a look at this rather pretty grass, which I shall pick for you because there are many of them. Try not to detach myself from my ear. Right, this is a beautiful grass called Melanus nerviglumus, and it's a really lovely so it's Natal, what's it called? Natal red top, I think they call it. You can see a very subtle pink tinge on the top of the inflorescence. Very gorgeous. And it's obviously got winged seeds. You can see they've got those little feathers, and you can see as the wind blows, they're flying off into the wind to go and propagate themselves elsewhere. Lots of them have already gone. It's not a good grazing grass, and you often find it on the sides of roads. It's kind of indicative of disturbed sites, but very beautiful, and doesn't taste great. It's so interesting how many of the grasses that are good for grazing actually taste quite nice. This tastes a bit sort of tastes a bit like bad mushrooms, to be honest. Let's break Brian a piece. There you go, Brian.
Thank you.
Tell me what you think that tastes like. But it is very, very pretty.
Morning.
Right, off we go.
Alright, pilot plane.
It does, hey? Now, we've been chatting a lot about mating leopards today without actually finding them, which is to my eternal discredit. Rosanna, you want to know if the females can get any kind of diseases from the males while they're mating? I'm sure they could. If there was, the male was rabid or had some other kind of disease that is transferred through bodily fluids, then absolutely she could get it from him. But, I don't think that they have the same suite of diseases that we have to deal with out here, and that's because, well, not out here, the human population has to deal with, and that's because, one of the major reasons that humans have such disease troubles is because we're so widely spread and we move around such a lot. So, were we to stay in one area, without outside influence, we'd get quite used to, just like the animals do out here, we'd get quite used to and get quite immune and inured to many of the diseases that are around the place. But because we have new diseases coming in from all over the place, largely caused by sort of the amount of international travel that we have, so we tend to get a lot sicker and pick up new nasty bugs. Same can't be said for the animals. They don't really move around a huge amount, but we do know that if you bring animals that haven't been quarantined into a strange area, they can bring all sorts of trouble through diseases from other areas. Nice question. Thank you, Roseanne. So Brian was just agreeing with me that this tastes very like a kind of mushroomy.
James.
Sounds like good news. Go ahead.
James, has got audio? Sounds like around the drainage line that goes from Old Missy Drive to the Stippet area.
Brent can hear them mating.
On the road that the drainage line coming is not.
Okay, copy that. I'm on my way there from the junction of Finn's and Philemon's cut line. Will you come along? Well, I don't know what your position is. Craig is at that Missy higher now. He can possibly switch it and listen. Right, good news everyone. So Brent was in here. He obviously switched off to listen, and he can hear them calling inside there. So we might be lucky. I don't think we'll both sit with them, so whoever finds them will enjoy the sighting and you will enjoy it with them. And Brent. This is great news. Spit out that foul tasting piece of grass. Right, so this is the drainage line. A drainage line, I was told the other day, is a very confusing term. It means dry riverbed, in case you're worried about it. It's like a kind of dry stream, if you like. So you can see now we're heading downhill, down the slope, towards a drainage line. So this would constitute a drainage line here. And Brent heard them in there, just that way. Watching them mating, we were having a lot of a conversation earlier about the fact that the Tingana has failed to produce any offspring with 3 females and about 6 mating events, and it begs the question of what we call false estrus. And Bugsy, you brought this up. Bugsy, you want to know about false estrus and what is it and how is it controlled and how does it all happen? False estrus, Bugsy, is caused by a female thinking or coming into estrus, and normally the purpose behind it is to secure the loyalty of a male.
In that general area where I thought there might be, I'm just going to switch off here.
So Brent is going to switch off and listen. He's around here, and that was Craig you saw going into the block here. We'll go a little bit behind him and then head further towards the east. And the reason they have these false estruses, Bugsy, is, like I say, to try and kind of tie the males in and derive some kind of loyalty. And they don't always conceive, because if they don't know that the males are going to be around for long, then having a youngster with a male that isn't going to be around will normally result in those cubs being killed by other males. So that's one of the reasons. And they can't control it. It's entirely physiological. So it is quite an interesting concept. I think it's far better understood in lions as it is in leopards. And I don't know, I wouldn't say that Karula necessarily came into a false estrus. I mean, she definitely didn't fall pregnant the last time she mated, nor did Shadow. Shadow may have come into a false estrus because of, we think maybe she's got a physiological abnormality that makes her come into estrus a bit sooner than some others might. But it's not, I wouldn't say that it's a particularly well understood concept. Right, so we're around the area where Brent heard them. He is also in here, as is Craig. So with any luck, if they get it on again, as they say, we'll hear them and we'll know what's going on. See if there's access into this drainage line. And they've travelled quite a long way since last night, probably about 2 kilometres. Well, maybe 1.5. It's not very far, I suppose, the crow flies. They've done a very circuitous route to get here. So country girl Ash, you were wondering if they were anywhere near where they were yesterday. Not really. Different reserve entirely, but they were very close to the boundary last night. Right, well, here comes the first scratch. Can you come on? Too bad. Okay. And Brian. Hoping they'll just come wandering along this drainage line towards us. Let's switch off and have a listen.
Gathering mobile after coffee. Any update?
Alarm calling squirrels.
Morning, Aubrey.
Let's go and have a look there. I can hear squirrels alarm calling just up here. We'll try and box our way up there.
Just the demo.
Ooh, what's up there? Squirrels will alarm call if they see leopards, and they'll also alarm call at just about anything else, but sometimes a good indicator of leopards. I really feel that we've worked very hard for these leopards and we deserve this. Funny how nature doesn't often work like that. Also tracks and audio of mating pair in the block between Finn's Rebecca's and Philemon's Cutline, 2 stations in the area. Follow up. Brent and Craig did have squirrels alarm calling to the south of the drainage line. I'm following up there. There is Andrew.
I'm just a little bit more west of where I saw Brent park his vehicle. I was walking around on the southern side as well. I want to see if I can make my way.
That is Andrew, being a total clown show. Brent is just around there, also looking for the leopard, and everyone is trying to listen. The squirrels were alarm calling around here somewhere, possibly at Brent. As I say, they will alarm call at anything. Jersey off. This is hot work, this tracking. Beautiful bird you can hear there. Called a grey-headed bushshrike. while we're driving along here, Gilly in Milwaukee, you have made a controversial statement that I really quite like, actually. You've said, I don't know these two leopards very well, but you viewers know them pretty well. Just going to break down a tree quickly.
Oh, so strong.
Immensely powerful. So, Gilly, you are saying we spoke briefly about the fact that perhaps there is multi-paternity in leopards and we don't know for sure. Now, you're saying you guys have watched Karula and Quarantine and Gunuma for not many years, well, yes, almost many years, and Quarantine and Kunuma don't look the same. They're different colours. One is blonde and one is gold. One is completely calm, and the other is and the other has a really what might be termed a poor attitude, I suppose. And you would like to postulate that perhaps they're half brothers from the same mother. I think it's entirely possible, Gilly. I really do. I'd love to know what other people think and whether that is possible or not. We don't know if leopards do it. We know of it in many other mammals, though, where there is multi-paternity in the same litter. Recap, have you perhaps just joined us like Sherry has? Sherry, we're looking for Tingana and for Shadow, two 9-year-old leopards, a mating pair that we saw last night, and we heard them in here just now. We had some squirrels alarm calling. Brent had them, or heard them just further off to that way. Craig is also in the area from Cheetah Plains. So we're hoping against hope that we might actually come up with something now. I'm just going to switch off again. We're going to have another listen. Leopards, as I say, are very vociferous breeders. And the squirrels were alarm calling in this thicket here. Like I say, I mean, it could have been a snake, it could have been anything. Lots of beautiful bird calls at the moment. Blue waxbills, and you can hear a grey hornbill in the distance. Bleep, 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 bleep. Very plaintive calling. But no further aggressive growling. And the leopards will probably start to go static at the moment. Thank you, X-Ranger, for taking a screenshot of Andrew doing his dance. He'll be most pleased with that, I'm sure. As you say, a lesser, I'm not sure, greater hooded, pointing Andrew dancing on the bonnet.
Yeah, morning 6. As soon as there's a space to go, I'm still trying to help relocate.
That's definitely going to scratch the new paintwork. So as I was saying, the leopards will probably start to cease moving soon. And that's because it's now getting a little bit warmer. There is Brent Leo Smith ahead of us. He is on foot. We've left Andrew alone in the wilderness. He will, of course, not pass up the opportunity to come and say hello to us. Hello! Fancy seeing you here. You said you heard them in here.
Beside here somewhere.
Because we have some squirrels alarm calling there.
It could easily be here, but I mean,
Around here.
is that gusting
Negative
wind? I just
no
got that.
Yeah.
I was talking
just
to
do
Craig
that
as it
again for us.
happened.
That's exactly what they sound like, actually.
So it's
Pretty
just
good.
caught it on the edge.
Very good. Well done.
James likes making me make funny noises. But yeah, I'd say here, but
Yeah.
I think definitely this side of the drainage.
Squirrels there, maybe still heading east.
Maybe.
Okay, I'll follow along the southern side of the drainage.
I'm just going to check Shabam Junction,
Okay.
just out of,
All right.
just in case.
Okay, I'll follow along the drainage line here, and we'll keep you posted. As you
luck.
were, get on with it. Don't dally.
And hopefully Andrew's not going to be dancing on the vehicle when I get back.
Yes, no, he was doing quite a dance. Mother would be proud, or embarrassed. I'm not sure which. While we're driving along, of course, sound an extremely important part of what we do and how we find animals. And Anna Marie, you think you heard an Ellie calling? No, I definitely didn't hear any elephants calling here now. It was probably the sound, actually, and I'm not being facetious here, of a tree scraping against the bodywork, which through the microphone, I suspect, would have sounded a little bit like an angry elephant. But keep it up, keep listening. And interesting one, so many of you have been with us for so long that you've started to recognize individual areas, of course. And Penny, you're wondering if this is a new area. It's not, it's actually really pretty close to central Djuma. It's just quite thick and there are not many roads in here. So unless there's an established sighting or something like the sound of leopards mating, we don't come into this area.
I'll come back and give you guys a hand again in the next screen, okay? Copy that.
So I think I heard the squirrel's alarm calling somewhere in here. So we will follow up along the drainage line here.
Drainage line between Flint's Road, Stack Line and Rebecca's. The last audio tracks also going east into that block.
I think this might be a little bit much for our new car, don't you? Yeah, we'll squeeze through there. Whether we'll get through this drainage line, I'm not sure. Now, so much of this vegetation that is lying on the ground is the result of elephants. Elephants being what elephants are not very clean eaters. Pretty dirty. And make a bit of a mess. Whoa! Yeah. The other side. So let's just head across to Brent. He will tell you exactly what he heard, where it was, and what he thinks is going on. Well, he did that already, I suppose, when you just saw him. But let's get an update from him and Andrew. You can ask him perhaps Andrew about his dance. We'll see you a little bit later, hopefully with some good news.
So, I'm sure James just wants me to make that noise again, as he made me do, I think, 3 or 4 times when I visited him just now, so just to get it out of the way. So what happened is I was talking to Craig, and at that point I had Andrew driving the vehicle and I was sitting on the tracker's seat looking for tracks, and the wind's gusting, which makes it quite difficult to pinpoint, bless you Andrew, the exact location, but I would say it's in this sort of area here. And just caught the tail end of a leopard's mating. But the wind is gusting. I'm very confident it's on the southern side of this drainage line. But where exactly on the southern side of this drainage line, that is a different story. So James is checking. You heard some squirrels alarm calling down there. And just to double check, make sure, to put my mind at ease, I'm heading to Shabam Philemon's Cutline Junction, just to make sure those tracks haven't crossed further south. And as of Andrew's dance moves, I missed them. Andrew, could you give us a blow-by-blow of your exact moves that you were doing while I was actually working and trying to find leopard?
No thanks.
No thanks. So, listening to the audio, Siberia, who's one of our zoomies on the Juma cam, would like to know how far can a leopard sawing be heard? Well, Siberia, that depends on a lot of different things: wind direction, which way the animal's facing. But sawing is quite different from mating. Sawing, probably very faint sawing. If you nice still night, no wind, quite quiet, you can probably hear it from 5 or 6 kilometers, but very faint, sort of in the distance. But yeah, nice clear audio. So probably you'd have to be within maximum of 1.5 kilometers, maybe pushing to 2 kilometers. But that mating, you generally have to be within about 1 kilometer or so to hear that. Andrew, I think we should try and get Andrew to reenact it for us. We just lock off the camera, pop him on the bonnet. He is blushing quite a lot now, so I think he likes to dance when no one's looking.
When I think no one's looking.
When he thinks no one's looking, exactly. And fortunately, it is recorded in time forever from Brian's camera, so we can all get together when after drive and critique Andrew's dance maneuvers.
No!
So, yes, that is a very good idea. We should get Brian to beatbox a beat and put that track on, and I think we should definitely make that a YouTube mission for today. Pop Andrew's dancing up on YouTube with Brian's beatboxing. So I'm just, to make myself feel comfortable, I want to check this area in case they manage to sneak across the road. Although James's last tracks were heading east, we want to really make sure that they haven't done a sneaky maneuver. So when we get the opportunity, we use these stuck under my stick little vials here to collect dung samples for Panthera, and they're doing a paternal study on leopards at the moment to find out who's the daddy. Nope. And Jan's wondering whether we've managed to collect from all the different leopards yet. We haven't. I think we've got Karula, Shadow, Mvula. I think we don't have Tingana yet. So if we do find him and we see him abluting as soon as he's moved off to a safe distance. One of us will leap out of the vehicle and collect his feces. Well, Andrew, you want to take that one? It's for you.
So Billy Joe is asking, why do I cover my face? Simply for the flies, that's all. The flies away. They're irritating little things, so that's why I cover the face.
Come in, Brent.
I'll repeat Andrew's answer now. James is just calling me. Standing by.
Brent, we have alarm calling. Alarm calling in Harlem. Block between Savage Track and on the cut line. Come into the area.
Copy, thanks, James. I'm at Shabam Savages Junction now. I'll check Savages through to Treehouse. So James said he heard some Impala alarm calls in this area we are in. So we're just going to check down here. And so Billy Joe was saying, Andrew always makes it so fun. Thank you very much, Andrew. But also, why do you cover your face, Andrew? And Andrew was explaining it's because he's so grotesquely ugly. No, I'm joking. It's for the flies that land on his face, and they do get very, very irritating. And unlike us who are able to swipe at the flies as we move through the bushes, the cameramen have to be so steady and focused, and both their hands are being used, and that is why they wear those buffs to keep the flies off their faces. Oh my goodness. How did you end up here? Ooh, very pretty. And I'm sure I used to know what butterfly you were from. Come on, I don't want to squash you. Get off my shoe. Here we go. I'm going to pop him on the dashboard. It is a caterpillar larval stage from a butterfly. Oh, I can't remember which one. Starting to, let's turn him a little bit. Let's walk this way so everyone can see you nicely. There we go. Where's my butterfly book? This could be a bit of a challenge. I definitely know I've seen this caterpillar before, but now trying to remember which butterfly it belongs to. I think I'm very clever sometimes. I'm not sure exactly which, but can you go tighter than that, Andrew?
No.
You can't. Let me try. So on his back there's some little spikes sticking out, and that's given away the family but not the exact butterfly. And sometimes we just have to go by the family, but because of his shape and his coloration, he's part of the Acria family. Which Acria I'm not 100% sure. And you can see there's another one here. They're a bit closer, but there are many hundreds of types of Acrias, but just from the shape and the movement, it's more than likely that this guy is a little Acria larval stage. Very, very pretty. Well, we'll leave him there till I can find a spot to pop him. And I can tell this is a butterfly because he's not so airy. Normally the moth caterpillars are those very, very hairy ones. You do get sort of protective spines on a few of the butterfly caterpillars, but they're not those really, really hairy caterpillars. Hey, little guy. quite often also called inchworms because of their movement. Looks like he just moves an inch every time he walks. And that bright colouring and orange head are what we call aposematic colouring. And I'm just going to find a tree to pop him on. And what that does is aposematic colouring warns predators that he is probably tastes absolutely vile. So orange, black, yellow, all aposematic colours. And the acria butterflies feed off at this larval stage, quite often off, come on, up you get, a plant called a Wolfaria. Come on. No, he wants to stay. There we go. A nice fresh bush willow leaf for you. And Wolfaria doesn't have an English name, so it's only got a Latin name. It's Wolfaria indica. And they sequester a poison from eating it that is a hydrogen cyanide, and that's what makes the adults noxious as well. So probably not going to kill a bird, it probably just tastes incredibly vile though. So, I know James has been asked this question from Boyd in North Carolina. And by the way, thanks very much, Boyd. Boyd says he loves watching the safaris. Our knowledge is so incredible and wonderful. Well, thanks, and you guys help with that by all your questions. We got to make sure we hit the books regularly to keep up to date with all you guys. And Boyd asking, what is the animal I like seeing most on safari, and what was my favorite encounter ever? Well, boy, for me, the favorite animal is a hands down easy affair. It is the African wild dog, or painted wolf. And my favorite sighting or encounter is far, far more difficult. There have been so many, but I'll just tell you one for now, and since my favorite animal is the wild dog, we shall tell you a wild dog story. I was very fortunate in growing up in Botswana, and the concessions where my parents had lodges and ran lodges in Botswana. There's a lot of general game here, so maybe they didn't come this way. The animals look far too relaxed. There's zebra, wildebeest and impala. And we were very fortunate in the fact that for 10 years running we had wild dogs den relatively close to our camps, and some years we even had 2 separate or 3 separate dens between the 3 camps. And so I spent an incredible amount of time with wild dogs, and wild dogs are a little bit easier to follow up on the floodplains of the Kwando River. There's a little bit more open, it's not as thick bush here as it is here. There is thicker bush back in the backcountry, but unfortunately most of the time they're denned around the river. And we were following the then was called a Labala pack, and there must have been 27 or 28 dogs in the pack at that stage. And we literally, hello zebras, we're looking for leopards, we're not looking for stripes, we're looking for spots. And we hadn't even driven out of camp yet. We'd probably gone 600 meters down the road, and we came across the pack of wild dogs at full speed, careering towards us, and in front of them was a mix of lechwe and impala, and they actually ran right up to the large deck, and they killed.
I'm back on my vehicle. Any updates?
They killed 7 impala in about less than 7 minutes, and I know this might be quite gruesome, but it is a very memorable encounter. So it was probably about this time of the year, so all the impala females were pregnant, and the one impala that was killed was right next to us, maybe 3 meters from us, and these wild dogs ripped her open, and a fetus came out and then stood up, and then 2 wild dogs grabbed the fetus from either side and ripped it in half. So that was one of my most memorable wild dog sightings, and there's so many. If you remind me, I'll try to do a couple a week, and we'll just, I think, stick to wild dogs for now. I've had so many fantastic times with wild dogs. So, chatting about the African wild dog, and Country Girl Ash is wondering, do they howl? Not really. They've got quite a wide vocal range. There's quite a lot of excited, almost tittering, like very high, chirping tittering when they get excited. They give a warning, almost cough or bark. It's sort of a roar. When they see a lion or something like that, it's a distressed bark. And then which happens quite often, they lose each other while they're hunting, because they hunt at such high pace. They have a woo call, which is a contact call, and it sort of sounds like this. And that's so the different members of the pack can rejoin. So, no sign. Sorry? Speaking of my favorite animal. I'll be with you guys now. So, chatting about my favorite animal, they're following wild dog tracks, but unfortunately quite far from our northern boundary. But the thing about wild dogs is they can move so far, so fingers crossed they make an appearance for the sunset safari. So, as you see, we do spend quite a bit of time on foot when we're tracking and things like that. And Anna-Marie's wondering, do they run away from people when on foot? Again, Anna-Marie, it also just depends on the situation. Sometimes they do. Other times they actually become very curious. I've lain down in a road like this with a pack of wild dogs, and I've had them come so close they misted up my camera lens trying to sniff it. So it all depends on the individual pack and the situation, whether they've been under pressure, whether they've been chased by lions recently. But normally they take very little notice of humans on foot, apart from occasionally being quite curious, especially if you lie down or sit down and sort of get into a strange position. And that again is one of my memorable wild dog encounters, lying down in the road while a pack of wild dogs came towards me, and all of them sort of being within 2 meters or 3 meters of me, sniffing, one even coming, I said, this far, so even its breath misted up the front of my camera. Weaver's Nest, Philemon's Dip. I've got no tracks coming out here. I think I'm going to take a gamble at Western Engine Quarantine if you haven't done it yet. James and I are still checking, and we're going to take a bit of a gamble. There goes James. James, just to confirm you're aware that your aerial is down. Copy, thanks. That's quite funny. So if you see the vehicles, we've got these antennas that stand up behind us and send out the signal. And as James said, his signal rope's had a catastrophic failure and it's facing down towards the ground, but it's still miraculously sending out a signal. So we're going to take a little bit of a gamble and try check the western edge of the quarantine clearings. And while we make our way towards that area, we're going to go to the man of many catastrophes. No, I'm joking. We're going to go over to Jan and see how he's been doing.
Hello everyone. Quite astonishing that you're still reaching us, really. We had a bit of a catastrophic aerial failure. The aerial detached itself on the back end of a fairly large bump, bashed Brian on the head, and then, well, it's just hanging useless and limp at the back of the car. But you're still receiving a signal, which is quite positive. We had some Impala alarm calling here. I came tearing into this area, drove off road, found nothing. Not an Impala, nothing. So it's all rather confusing, rather frustrating. I think these leopards have given us the slip, to be honest. And I think, well, we got to see them last night, I suppose, and maybe they just wanted a bit of romantic privacy for the rest of the day. Who knows? But we've been stopping, listening, trying to hear. Adding. Anyway, we'll keep going to the end of the drive, which is not too long from now. Brent is going to take a chance, as I'm sure you heard him say to me, around quarantine clearings and just see if they don't pop out there. So we've had one definite track, one definite sound of them mating. So we're obviously not seeing these leopards, so let's chat about one or two other things. A very nice query from Marcel coming through there about the fact that there are asphalt or tar roads in the Kruger National Park. And she's seen twice on Kruger National Park sightings that antelope have slipped on the roads there during the course of a chase or a kill. Marcel, it does happen from time to time. You say, is it unfair to the animals, or you think it is unfair? Yeah, I suppose it is slightly unfair, but I tell you what, those tar roads do. They provide far more in the way of advantage than they do disadvantage, and it's always a balance, as with all things. And the big advantage that they provide is that there's no erosion. There's no soil erosion from the movement of roads, and that is a hugely important thing. I don't know if you saw this thing with Brent. He did come past here. That, of course, is a marabou stork.
I've been into that
So I'm just turning the radio down. It's making too much noise now. Marcel, yes, it is possibly a disadvantage to some animals if they're being chased across it, quite possibly. But remember that the only time that you will see Kruger sightings is normally on those roads, and so there will be a kind of misrepresentation of the disadvantage that it causes. And secondly, because of the number of vehicles driving around in the Kruger Park, those asphalt roads, well, they're not particularly good to look at. From the point of view of erosion, and soil loss and other aspects of general ecology. They're less of a hindrance than they are a disadvantage. So I'm afraid that's why they're there. But I agree with you, it's very distressing to see an antelope running onto the tar and falling over and struggling to maintain any grip. So that large bird there has no such troubles. It is the ugliest bird possibly in the world. It is called a marabou stork, and it is a scavenger and quite closely related to some of the old or new world vultures, like the condor. It's more a stork than it is an old world vulture. And we're chatting about birds here, and we'll just move slowly along. Virginia in Kentucky, you say you've heard a bird here that sounds like a rusty gate spring, and you want to know what it is. Virginia, I don't really know, to be honest, which bird you're talking about. There is a bird there called a crested francolin that sounds a little bit like a fastly swinging rusty gate hinge. It might be that, perhaps, the crested francolin. There are some buffalo through there. No, they're not buffalo, they're wildebeest. And they look completely relaxed, not at all terrified or panicked by the thought of mating leopards in the general vicinity. There are also some zebra. So we'll just drive off-road here and we'll have a little watch of them. And what I'll do, Virginia, is pull out my bird app on my phone and I'll play you the sound of the crested francolin. And perhaps that will clear up the mystery of the rusty gate hinge bird. This is roundabout where those impala were alarm calling, so I don't think there's a great deal of leopard activity in this area. Head, Brian, you don't need to watch out for the aerial, of course. Yeah, the great migration has begun. There we go. Beautiful wildebeest. We wouldn't normally drive off-road for them, but because of what we think might be in the area, I thought it would be a good idea. Okay, so you watch them. I'll quickly find the crested francolin on my bird app, and we'll see if this is the rusty gate hinge for Virginia. Francolin, crested francolin. Right, here we go, Virginia. Listen up. This is the crested francolin calling. Is that perhaps what you were hearing? That's all I can think of, I'm afraid. I'll let you know if I hear any other rusty gate hinge birds, but I suspect crested francolin might be what you're looking for. This is the only herd of wildebeest that we have here, and they wander around here and onto quarantine clearings quite a lot, and they're quite easily recognizable by those kind of the youngsters there with their very rufous heads. Little herd of wildebeest. And Christy, you're very kindly wondering about Brian's head, and is it okay, Brian?
Yeah, it'll be alright.
It's pretty sore though. He did get a horrible whack. So he'll be okay. We'll tend to him when we get home. Wrap bandages around his head. Give him soothing chicken soup. interesting one from Gerda. Gerda, yes, I think maybe you're right. So, Christy, we're going to play you another one. Gerda reckons it might be the grey-headed bush shrike. That sounds like a rusty... let me just find the bird. Sounds like your rusty hinge. Right, here we go. Nice one, Gerda. Maybe that's it. Beautiful sounding bird. And in Afrikaans, its name is the spookvoël, which means ghost bird because it sounds like a ghost fluttering through the bush. That's his alarm call. Good one, Gerda. Thank you. Right, let us leave these wildebeest. I can't hear any leopards mating around them. Our way out of the block here, and wildebeest do not occur in great numbers in the Sabi Sands. The habitat is not conducive to those huge herds that you get in East Africa. And Kachino, John, you've pointed out that is the case. That they're just a few million short here. They are. We've got about 25 here. They have 20 or 2 million of them in the Serengeti. Some zebra in front of us. Oh. We'll leave them just in case we don't pick up the leopards in the last few minutes of drive. Dubious comment here from Pretty Nightmare, who asked if I took life insurance out of Brian and therefore I'm trying to knock him out. No, Brian and I are not partners in that sense, and so life insurance on each other, we are not the beneficiaries of each other's vast life insurance policies. Brian, do you even have life insurance? No, Brian doesn't have life insurance, so knocking him out for that would be, well, I mean, all it would net me would be a couple of buffs and perhaps his dark glasses. No further sign of these heavingly irritating cats, so I think we'll just enjoy the last few minutes. Glorious African morning. It was very beautiful, and I'm very pleased about the cloud cover, I must say, because this time of year with no cloud is very, very hot indeed. Looking at what I consider to be the ugliest bird in South Africa, the marabou stork. And Anna Marie, they are fascinating. You say that they are incredibly fascinating. They are certainly fascinating, and you like to see them with their wings out. How big is their wingspan? I'm going to guess at roughly 1.5 or 1.6 meters, which would be roughly, say, 5 feet. I'm just going to check exactly, because this remarkable bird app I have will tell me precisely what their wingspan is. Right, Marabou, there you are, you ugly fellow. Ooh, large bubbles. There we go. Wingspan, ooh, much bigger than I thought. Up to 2.5 meters. Now, Brian, you're about 2 meters tall, aren't you? So, Brian is not short. 2 meters is 6'4", and so a big marabou stork has a wingspan of 7 feet. That's quite impressive. Wow, that is really impressive. I was only 2 feet out. Thanks for that, Anne-Marie. Wouldn't have learned that otherwise. Nothing further. I was speaking a little bit about the rain, the fact that we haven't had it yet, the proper rain, and I think it's only going to come in almost a month's time, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe about 3 weeks. You can see every afternoon it's starting to build, and then it dissipates, and then it comes back and builds. And one of the things that will come with the proper rains will be frogs. In Christina, Michigan, the chances, you want to know the chances of seeing a bullfrog. The chances of seeing a bullfrog today, I would say, are smaller than the chances of us finding those leopards, certainly. Smaller than the chances of us finding a tiger out here, perhaps. They are definitely not going to be around until there is a lot of rain. But then they will come out in profusion. And especially at night, we should be able to see some of the huge bullfrogs that we get here. Two species, one the African bullfrog and the other the giant African bullfrog. Righty, I'm just going to stop here. We're going to have one very last listen and see if there isn't some perhaps sound of mating leopards in the throes of passion. There you can see lovely gunmetal grey skies that we have today. Not so nice in various parts of the world where gunmetal grey is the standard sky colour, but very nice here where it just happens every so often. Right, that's it everybody, I'm afraid, from me. Big thank you to Brian, and sorry for the injury caused to you. I hope that we will fix you up a bit later. Thank you to all of you for your questions and comments. We're going to hand over to Brent and to Andrew for the last few minutes, and they'll take you through their plans, and I will see you this afternoon at about 4 o'clock. See you later. Keep safe. Bye-bye.
So we haven't given up on finding these leopards just yet. If we don't get any luck, we'll definitely try on the sunset safari. But just double checking this western edge of quarantine clearings in case they've come through the block heading in an easterly direction. This wind is making following that audio quite difficult, but you never know, they might appear. On the Djuma Cam, it is the closest water, so zoomies, beware and keep a close lookout during the day. Oh, just see some head popping up. Go back while I maneuver. Boyd, thanks for another question, Boyd. I was wondering, do leopards sometimes hunt in pairs, like cheetahs sometimes do? Not really, Boyd. They're far more solitary. Oh, it's going to be one of the harder. Let's test Andrew's skills. You see it, Andrew? Oopsie. Boyd, sometimes when there's a youngster, don't need to move.
I could see it, but I think it's moved.
No, it's still there. Same place. A bit further to the back. There we go. There we go. Giraffe disappearing through the thick bush. But Boyd, sometimes you will find two leopards on a kill or whatnot, but it's generally almost always been made by the individual, and the other will either steal it or share it. If it's a big male leopard, normally steal it, being the operative word. Let's see. Oh, they're quite far. There seems to be quite a few of them there, but they're really deep in the bush. I think that's the best view we're going to get of them. It's so nice that this group of giraffe have been hanging around quarantine. They do have that young one with them. It's probably a couple of months old now. Maybe we'll get a view of them from this angle. But they are in that drainage line, and hopefully they're going to come out onto quarantine and maybe even head down to the Juma Dam for a drink. So another one for the zoomies to watch out for, the giraffe. So when we heard those leopards, it's in that general area, but quite far. I just thought if they are on the move, it's worth checking around here. It's been quite cool this morning, but the humidity and warmth has just stepped up a notch now. And we're having a quick look around this. I'm really hoping that they do make themselves a little bit more visible on the sunset safari. And we have had a great morning. It's been a little bit quiet on the sighting front, but it's been really, really fun tracking. A little bit frustrating at times. The fact that cheetah crossed on top of our tracks, so he was just ahead of us. So we found his tracks, turned around, started heading back towards the boundary, and we must have missed him by about 20 minutes or so. But that's the way it goes out in the bush here. You never know what could appear or disappear. But I'm quite confident those leopards are on Juma, which is the start, and hopefully James and I can utilize our experience to pull not a rabbit but a cat out of the hat on the sunset safari. Just gonna stand by here. Hopefully we get one last little bout of audio that will give us a good direction where to look a little bit later. Come on, kitty cats. But we can always hope, and as I said, it's a great start that they actually are in Juma, so there's a strong possibility we are going to be able to pull the proverbial cat out of the hat. And thanks very much for joining myself and James and Andrew and Brian and FC, Lou and Tara on this sunrise safari. Not much sun in the rise, but it's been really exciting, been really wonderful having you guys with us. Thanks for all the questions. And we've got a special treat for the end of this sunrise safari. Someone has been very clever with the computer, and they've managed to put together a little clip of Andrew's bonnet dancing. So you're going to be able to enjoy that after we finish drive. Andrew has got a look of shock and horror behind the camera, and I'm sure there's going to be some choice words said around the breakfast table. But don't forget to join us for the sunset safari. Hopefully we'll find those leopards.